Sounds great. So welcome everyone to our fall workshop series. My name is Monique St. Laurent, and I'm the workshop coordinator at Boston Building Resources. We are pleased to share this special workshop with each of you, Solar 101. As was mentioned, this will be a recorded event, and if you missed anything, we'll have this recording available for your review. The experts on our panel this evening that has generously offered their time are Mike Condon and Matt Schuler of EnergySage. Mike is a BBR member with an extensive background in clean energy, having worked as a residential solar consultant in Massachusetts before working for the quasi-state government agency, Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. He's currently a partnerships manager at EnergySage. Matt is a senior energy advisor at EnergySage, and his role is to help support EnergySage's consumer network in making not only the best, but most educated and empowered decisions about how to proceed with going solar. Thank you, Mike and Matt, and I will turn it over to you to get started.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Monique. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for jumping on this call and taking the time out of your night to go through Solar 101. We're excited to be here and to chat with you all about what solar is all about, why you see so many friends, family, neighbors, colleagues going solar, and just a little bit of background, as Monique mentioned, on the partnership between EnergySage and Boston Building Resources. So before we dive into everything, just a few quick housekeeping items. This is going to be an hour-long workshop session. As Monique mentioned, it is being recorded and will be shared within the next couple of BBR newsletters for those who aren't able to attend or if you had to drop off. We'll have a decent amount of time for Q&A at the end of the presentation, so feel free to just drop your questions into the chat box as you think of them as we're going through the presentation, and we'll very likely have a good chance to get through a good majority of them. And then lastly, if you're interested in registering your property at any point, whether during this presentation or afterwards, to get solar quotes through the EnergySage marketplace, whether it's for rooftop solar with the panels actually on your roof, or whether it's subscribing to a community solar farm, which we'll talk about both, please use the link that you see on your screen here, www.energysage.com/p/BBR. All right, so brief overview of what you can expect from this webinar. We just did the quick welcome. Well, I'll give my EnergySage overview just so you have an idea of who EnergySage is, a little bit of background on us, and then what that partnership with BBR is, where it came from, and then I'll hand it over to Matt. Matt's going to go through understanding the basics of solar, rooftop, community solar, really how to get started, and then we'll open up, like I said, to a Q&A at the end, and definitely, like I said, feel free to drop your questions in the chat box. So you've met us already. Monique did a great intro. If you have any questions for us at any point or afterwards, feel free to email either myself or Matt. Our emails are listed right here. And with that, let's dive right into it. So who is EnergySage and what are we all about? EnergySage's mission is to empower people like yourselves to make smarter energy decisions through simplicity, transparency, and choice. We were actually founded in Boston in 2012. We're headquartered here still and received support from the Department of Energy originally, as well as state agencies, Mass CEC and NYSERDA. What our ethos is and what we're all about is that we recognize that the solar process is intimidating, it's overwhelming, it's confusing for most people, and we set out to change that. We wanted people to feel more comfortable as they go through something that is not the most straightforward process. So it's getting away from the folks that are door knocking and disturbing you on your residence, or chasing you around Home Depot and Lowe's trying to talk to you about solar. We wanted to get the industry away from that, allow consumers to research solar from, like I said, the comfort of your homes without high pressure sales tactics. If you're anything like me, I typically pay my electric bill, don't look at anything on it, and just be done with it every month. And I assume most people are like that. And so when you start talking about kilowatt hours and net metering and what is rooftop solar versus community solar, what's better for that, And for my situation, it can get really convoluted and really confusing for the everyday person. So EnergySage provides objective, unbiased educational solar content. We provide tools and resources, calculators, and a competitive marketplace to homeowners and renters interested in exploring their solar options. In those 10 years, we've become the most visited solar website in the country. We have about 10 million unique site visitors each year who are seeking to become more informed about solar. And that's really amounted to over the 700,000 solar shoppers that we've helped in that time. And I think that just speaks to really that educational component, no matter where you're at in your solar journey, whether you're just trying to get research and understand what is solar all about, from a solar 101 perspective, all the way down to super granular technical stuff. We have all of that information on there. It's all free. And then we help you throughout your customer journey. So if you did want to take that next step and looking to go solar, we can help you through that with our competitive marketplace, which is what Matt will speak to in a bit. So what does this relationship look like for EnergySage and Boston Building Resources? We kicked this off about 2 months ago. And as you can see, it's already making a positive environmental impact within the BBR community. In helping members go solar. So already planted about 4,000 trees, taken X amount of cars, 30 cars or so off the road, avoided 160 metric tons of carbon emissions just by registering to go solar. So what are your benefits? And then what are the benefits to BBR in a partnership like this? Member benefits include free objective information. As I mentioned, it's all 100% online and you don't get any spammy phone calls. Matt will speak to this a little bit more in the upcoming slides as well. But then you'll also have a dedicated energy advisor similar to what Matt does. Matt will speak to you throughout your solar journey and help kind of coach and support you as you start to learn if solar is the right fit for you and what options presented to you are better than others. And then with the EnergySage marketplace, it's an apples to apples comparison, side-by-side comparison, where you can see a number of quotes from a variety of locally vetted solar installers in your area. So let's take Boston, for example. Any installer that services the Boston area, EnergySage is vetting them to allow them to come onto our marketplace to provide you, the consumer, with quotes. We actually deny about 60 to 65% of installers that look to join our marketplace because they just don't tick the boxes that we are looking for, many of which include being licensed and insured, good standing with the Better Business Bureau, positive online reviews, have been in business for some time and understand the solar industry. With that being said, National Renewable Energy Laboratory had done an independent study on us to look at our competitive marketplace and determine that folks that use our marketplace save up to $10,000 as opposed to calling solar installers directly. And I think that speaks to two things on two different fronts. One is the educational component that EnergySage provides. Again, all free, unbiased, objective education. And the second is having that apples to apples comparison where you're able to see a number of solar quotes side by side without having to speak on the phone to any installer until you feel comfortable and confident in reaching out to them saying, hey, yeah, come out to my property. I want you to check out some more specific things relative to what we're looking to do. And so what are the BBR benefits? This helps members like you save on your electric bills by going solar through our unbiased marketplace. BBR does receive a small referral bonus that is then reinvested back into whatever BBR is working on, and he help support staff in other programs that are being run. And then collectively, like I had mentioned, what we have already accomplished above in just 2 short months. This is our first webinar that we're doing with BBR. And so I anticipate that we'll see collectively as a community, more folks looking to go solar, whether with rooftop or community solar. And with that said, Matt, I will let you take the reins. Just let me know when you want me to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Mike. So I think Mike had mentioned it a bit when we were going through the initial EnergySage introduction. But before we go into more specific kind of the Solar 101 slides for this webinar, I can talk a little bit about what my role is within the marketplace and really what we're here to offer. So I'm a senior energy advisor on our energy advisory team. Every property that registers on EnergySage is assigned someone from my team, either myself or another advisor, who's essentially here as a resource for you while you're going through the full process to help understand what you're looking at as far as comparing quotes, understanding options, what really makes solar tick, and identify your best next steps for proceeding should you be interested in going forward with the solar install. But yeah, Mike, if you can go next slide here. So we're going to talk a little bit about the components that make up a system, the actual system connections, how that interacts with your utility company, just some of the general overall benefits of solar, and then a quick walkthrough of the EnergySage marketplace and how we can sort of help you through each step of the way here. There's obviously a lot to look into here, and it's difficult to cover everything in depth over the course of an hour. So we might go through stuff somewhat quickly here. We do have a Q&A section of this webinar, so if you have a question over the course of the webinar, feel free to drop it in the question section. If it makes sense for us to talk about it during the slides, we will quickly touch base on it, but otherwise we'll have time at the end for more specific questions and to kind of talk you through how to get started. So what actually makes up a solar system for a residential setup? So there are essentially 5 main pieces of the system that you can really boil it down to. You have your PV panels, your solar panels that are obviously the pieces that are drawing in the energy from the sunlight. You have the inverters. So your home uses alternating current, but energy comes off the panels in direct current, essentially DC versus AC. So the inverter is the piece that takes the energy generated off the panels and makes it usable by your home. Then you have the racking and mounting systems, which is what's actually attaching it to your roof or to the ground if you're going for a ground mounted setup versus a rooftop setup. You have your performance monitoring systems, or potentially a smart panel as well, that are actually tracking the performance of your system as it's generating energy off the roof and sort of tracking how it's interacting with your home's usage setup. And then finally, there's the solar battery. So the battery is the main optional piece of the system here. Without a battery, your system will function just fine so long as you maintain connection to the grid. But if you add a battery, which again is optional, it allows you to have some flexibility and some resiliency for the system should you lose connection to the grid. Kind of works a bit like a solar generator, but with some more added flexibility of allowing you to be a little bit smarter with your usage and export less energy back to the grid. And we'll talk about how that works in just a couple slides here. So here's a quick diagram of how the actual system interconnection works with your home. Energy is created off the panels. It'll go through your inverter to make it into usable energy for the home, travel into your home's electrical panel, at which point it'll either be directed into your home for immediate usage within the home's appliance load, or it'll be redirected to your electrical meter, which is the piece that's connected to the grid. If your meter is not already backwards compatible, when you go solar, you're going to have a new meter put in that allows you not only to draw energy from your utility grid, but also to backfeed it back to the utility grid itself. And so what that is it causes a process called net metering, wherein when you're producing energy, when you're not able to immediately use it by the home, you essentially export energy back to the utility grid and essentially receive store credit with your utility for all this excess production. And these credits offset the energy you might use during the nighttime or during a cloudy day, essentially allowing you to financially cover energy even if you're not able to immediately use it. And so that kind of fundamentally, that's why a battery is not necessary for every system, because you don't need to be able to store all of the energy you're generating. But ideally, if you're able to use it directly as well, it obviously cuts out the middleman with the utility. But so with any residential system, you will inherently remain grid tied, essentially allowing you to capitalize on the benefits of being connected to the grid while consistently offsetting a large portion of your utility cost over time. If not all of it through, again, either direct coverage or through the credits you're receiving by sending energy back to the grid. Next slide here, I believe, has a quick little diagram of how net metering works. Again, you're drawing energy from the grid during the nighttime when your system is not generating energy. And when you're overproducing during the day, you're sending any excess energy you have back to the grid and essentially, for lack of a better term, running your meter backwards and your utility tracks the energy you're exporting. I think we have a quick little video here from EnergySage kind of walking through the general process of how the solar installation works here as well. Mike, the video might be muted here.
Sorry about that.
The foreman went solar with one of EnergySage's pre-screened installers and chose a 6.7 kilowatt solar system. Step 1, prepping the roof for solar panels. Here, the team of 3 installers are placing racks on the roof that will hold the 24 solar panels. Step 2, connecting the panels to the roof. The panels are mounted on the racking equipment and will soon begin to generate solar electricity. They are connected to a string inverter that converts solar energy into usable electricity. Solar panels are lightweight and very durable. They require no maintenance and they last more than 30 years. The Formans purchased their system and will break even in just 5 years. By going solar, they will save $2,250 on electric bills annually. They also avoid nearly 7 tons of carbon, which is equal to planting 127 trees every year. And it took less than a day to install. Find out your solar savings potential. Get an instant estimate or check out the solar gallery for more solar systems at work at EnergySage.com.
Great, love it. So yeah, that video talked a little bit about it, but what are some of the actual benefits of going solar? So in terms of the financial perspective, drastically reducing or even eliminating your entire electric bill is obviously, it's a big add. And I think most of the people here in this webinar are going to be from Boston. I'm from Boston as well. Obviously, utility costs around here aren't cheap, and they certainly aren't going down anytime soon. So being able to go solar to start offsetting that is a big plus financially over time. Avoiding rising energy costs is another big aspect of that. You can essentially think of going solar as locking yourself into a set utility rate over the lifetime of the system. Either financing the system or prepaying it just through a cash purchase. You're giving yourself a set value for the energy you're generating over time that is going to, over a certain period of time, be less than what you would have spent cumulatively through your utility. Kind of like buying a home versus continuing to rent. And so increasing your property value is another big plus, not often talked about quite as much. And part of that is going to be due to the fact that some areas it's a little bit difficult to put a value on. But in an area like Massachusetts, where solar is increasingly popular over time and people are very solar friendly, there is a palpable add to the home's resale value, typically by about 4% based on data from Zillow. So even if you haven't been able to completely offset the cost of the system over the period of time that you're in the home when you have a solar system installed, you will be able to get some of that back upon home resale as well. Finally, and obviously this is a big add as well, reducing your carbon footprint. The environmental benefit over time of the cumulative amount of fossil fuels that are burned through utility costs that are offset by solar is more substantial than you might think if you look at the numbers over time. And so being able to offset that by creating your own clean energy, exporting energy back to your community, and creating and supporting local renewable energy jobs in your area in the process is obviously a big add beyond just the financial benefit of solar over time. So how does this actually work with EnergySage? So again, essentially, and I know we've mentioned this a couple of times, we are an online marketplace that helps connect you with local installers in your area to receive and compare a number of options from pre-vetted solar installers on our marketplace. Many people will start their search with us either at the research phase. We have a wealth of thousands of content articles breaking down individual pieces of solar equipment, solar incentive programs, just helping you kind of get your process started by understanding more about how the technology and how the process works. So upon registering with us, and the registration is very easy, it only takes about 10 minutes. What we ask for is essentially, we ask you to give your address, your contact information, really just your email address, drop a pin on your roof so we know where your actual roof location is for the solar installed. Then we just ask you to estimate your average electricity consumption. And that can be through providing us with a copy of your bill or just giving us an average cost that you pay per month so that we can give the installers an idea of how much energy they're actually looking to cover. Beyond that, if you have any further preferences regarding equipment choice, future expansion to your home's utility load, such as adding an electric vehicle or heat pumps, just a general idea of what your goals are with going solar over time, we then send out your property to our system of again, pre-vetted installers. They review the property, they review the information, and they prepare a bid for you. So you'll receive a number of bids. Most homes on our platform typically get 3 to 4 quotes on average, if not more. You are able to review all the quotes completely independently without getting phone calls from installers left and right, get an idea of what stands out to you, who your front runners are, and really understand what you're looking at going into the process before you actually start connecting with, maybe the sales reps from each installer directly. This is where my part of the process comes in, and myself and the rest of my team. Every account on our site is assigned an advisor from our energy advisory team to be an optional resource for you if you're looking to really sift through the information during the process without going to an installer directly. Once you've decided which company makes the most sense for you and potentially had a couple initial phone conversations with them as you're getting to this part of the process, you'll go ahead and select your applicable installer on the way, and we'll get you connected with them for starting the process of moving forward. Finally, this will involve essentially an on-site survey with your installer to take a closer look at the roof, take a closer look at your electrical usage, and finalize the proposal with you directly. This full process, for what it's worth, from signing the contract through full installation and interconnection, typically is going to take you about 3 months on average, but the actual install only takes about a day. Once they have the parts sourced and submitted, they'll just get the system up on your roof and get you fully permitted with your utility company. So here is a quick snapshot of what some of the quotes on our platform look like. If anyone here has already registered with us, these pages probably look pretty familiar. If you haven't, this is a quick window into what it'll actually look like when you get your bids through us. So we give you a variety of different pages to start comparing the options on quotes that you've gotten. We break down quotes based on specifically price per unit, best overall equipment that you've been quoted. You can dive into the panel and inverter models if you're interested to compare the specs of the equipment on a more direct level. You can look at the total cost of the system, the amount of time it'll take for the system to essentially hit its return on investment, and then finally vet the installers directly. So we have a thorough ratings and reviews section for each individual company on our site. You can read through some customer testimonials, their company history, look into what other services they offer, and again, thoroughly vet the option you're looking at before you even have your first phone call with them. Anyone who's looked into solar before probably understands that it can be a little bit murky to really get a good idea of what you're looking at and who you're working with. We try to make that as easy and as transparent as possible to make you not only make it easier for going through the process, but to make you feel more empowered with your decision when you're actually ready to take the next step. As going solar is something people likely will only do once, potentially twice over their life. So it's probably not something you've looked at before. And if you're shopping for something brand new to you, it can be difficult to get your feet set. So we try to not only make that easier for both you and the installer, but make it sort of simpler moving through it over time. And again, I know I've mentioned this before, you have the energy advisor support throughout the way. So if you've already registered, you've maybe already gotten emails from us. Once you do register, we'll be reaching out, just giving you the opportunity to connect with us. When I speak with customers, I speak with people from every stage of the process, from people who are just now looking at it for the first time, versus people who have looked at this for years and are finally ready to start taking the next step to making a decision. So again, the value of this is that we are completely unbiased among the quotes that you've gotten. We are not looking to push you one way or another. We're really just looking to get an idea from you of what your goals really are and figure out if and what is the best option for you for proceeding. So whether that's just acting as a soundboard to be able to help you talk through questions you have, or actually helping you dive into the decision making directly to do a full comparison, we're here as a resource for you. So once you register with us, I absolutely recommend you take advantage of the support if you're interested. So we have a couple frequently asked questions here. I don't know if any of this might have come up already for any of you, but I thought it was worth kind of running through a couple of the basic questions people might ask when they're really looking into this for the first time. So is my roof suitable for solar? This is absolutely something you'll want to have as a consideration when you're looking into this for the first time. So not only is this going to be a question regarding whether your home's orientation is right, ideally you want as south facing of a roof as possible, but east and west are both absolutely viable if you're not perfectly due south. But you also want to look at stuff like the pitch and orientation of the roof, and then finally what condition the roof is in. Solar systems are built to last. It's mostly a set it and forget it technology in the sense that it's something that there's no moving parts, there's no consumables. It's not like a car where you're changing the oil every year. So you want the system to ideally be lasting you for 20, 25, 30 years. Systems are warranted for about 25 years for the most part, for what it's worth. So you want a roof that's going to be able to last through that. And so if your roof is already 10, 15, 20 years old and has seen a little bit of wear and tear, it might be worth having someone take a look at the roof to see if it's worth replacing it before moving forward. It is possible to replace a roof with solar already on it, but it's a bit of a logistical headache in terms of having a contractor come out to remove the system and reinstall it once the roofing work is done. So what's very common for people looking into solar is to just do the full thing in one swing. A lot of solar installers also offer roofing services. The ones who don't might work with local roofers in your area to partner to get the full project done. If you wanted to finance, you can typically finance both parts of the project together and get them done in one full swing. And then once you have a new roof up on there, it'll age properly with the system, and having solar will typically give your roof an extra couple years on that lifespan just by giving it an extra layer of protection from the elements, which is a nice sort of plus of solar to the side there. How do I size my system correctly? Inherently, this is a little bit habit-based. So Your cost of electricity can essentially vary a bit over time, depending on where you are. It's typically pretty consistent in Massachusetts, and most of your net metering credits are going to be at a 1-to-1 rate. So you're getting full value out of everything you're sending back to the grid. But the other question there is that you're looking at this again as ideally a 25, 30-year system. So for how long you're going to be in the home, you want your solar to cover as much of your usage as possible. So if your needs right now don't look quite like what your needs might look like 2 or 3 years from now, you ideally want to size for that as best as possible. So some people might think that they know they're going to get an electric vehicle in a couple of years, or again, we mentioned heat pumps, adding a hot tub. Maybe you're going to have a couple more people living in the home than are right now. So ideally, that's something you want to size for as best as possible. There is some element of estimation there that's going to go in, but I would typically say, unless you're fairly confident your needs are going to stay the same or decrease over time, giving yourself a bit of a buffer in terms of overall production is usually going to be worthwhile more often than not. How does the federal investment tax credit work? So this is essentially beyond your utility coverage, going to be one of the main value drivers of solar from a financial perspective. There is a 30% federal income tax credit for people going solar, meaning that on the total cost of the project, you are going to receive a tax credit worth 30% of that on your taxes for the year following your installation. How does this work? Essentially, come tax season the following year, you're going to submit one additional form where you will tally up the total cost of install, including all necessary aspects that are going to part of getting the full physical system installed. That would include the actual parts and labor of the system itself, as well as something like replacing your electrical panel for going solar is something you can bundle in. And then you receive it as a credit against your tax liability. This credit was recently increased, so it was previously 26%, decreasing to 22% next year. With the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act, the credit was increased to 30% and extended through 2034. So you have plenty of time to claim the credit. I would always say with available incentives, the earlier you claim it, the more that credit's going to be worth over time. But essentially, if you aren't able to get the system installed this year, you will still be able to claim it next year and for future tax seasons. And finally, it obviously requires that you have the tax liability to be able to claim it. So you do need to be able to pay a certain amount of federal income tax to be eligible for the credit, but it does roll over for a certain period of time. So if you're not able to claim the full credit in the first year of eligibility, you are able to roll the credit over to future tax seasons if you have a small amount remaining to claim. What is the lifespan of my system? So I talked about this a bit. Equipment is typically going to be warranted from the manufacturer for about 25 years on average. For most panels and most inverter models, it's going to be about 25 years, potentially a low end of 12 years for certain types of equipment. But again, it's not equipment that you're going to be replacing every 2 or 3 years. Potentially, you might replace a couple inverters, especially if you have microinverters over time. But largely, it's equipment that is built to last, and you'll have your installer and your manufacturer there to help support should you need any help servicing it down the road. Finally, should I wait for better technology? Solar, as it's a relatively new industry, equipment can change over time, and people are generally curious, am I getting in at the right time to be able to get systems that are going to be able to give me what I need? I would say overall, if you're looking at how equipment has kind of evolved over the last, let's say, decade or so, it obviously has gotten better over time. I would say equipment efficiency has largely plateaued a bit over the last couple of years. Really, the one type of technology that I'd say we're really seeing pretty big strides in is battery storage. So if there was one piece you were going to hold off on to maybe retrofit at a later date, I'd say holding off on batteries is probably the most common example of that. But the equipment is good enough right now that for most people who are looking to go solar, it's going to be able to get the job done. You're going to be able to put in a system that's covering your needs at this time. And as long as you're able to get it at a rate that's going to be competitive against your utility costs, I would say the earlier you go solar just essentially means you're going to offset more utility costs over time. If you hold off a year to do the install, maybe you get the system for a slightly better rate, but you also missed out on a year of being able to come close to, if not fully offset, a year's worth of utility costs. So I'd say it is a system that will essentially accrue value over time. And the more value you're able to accrue in utility offset is typically going to lead to just a better overall long-term savings calculation for you. Now, finally, I'd say one example of a technology people will potentially want to hold off for is something like solar shingles. Solar shingles are a newer technology than panels, and I'd say that they're very attractive for people who need the full roof install to go with the system. I would say they're early enough that there's not quite enough adoption to it yet for it to be worthwhile for a lot of people. It's not the most cost-effective option. But from an aesthetics perspective, some people will be fairly tied to not going the traditional panel route. I understand that. Realistically, it might be a little bit before a lot of people are going to have access to that as a technology, though. I am going to pull one question from the chat here because it's fairly relevant to what we were just talking about. How long does a new roof typically last? This is going to vary depending on a couple factors, notably what material you're looking at. I'd say most roofs you're typically going to be looking at a nameplate life expectancy of 20 to 30 years probably. And though if a roof says it's going to last 20 years, you could probably get the better part of 30 years out of it as long as your roof doesn't see a lot of wear and tear. You know, if it's typically in very direct sunlight, sees a lot of wind pressure, a lot of snow, obviously snow is pretty relevant around here. That can age a roof a little bit, but that's a benefit of solar as well, is that, you know, all of this surface area on your roof that would otherwise be getting kind of beaten down directly by the elements are now going to have this nice big shield over top of it to be able to kind of give it a good amount of extra life expectancy over time. So a roof that might have gotten 25, 30 years without solar, you might get the better part of 40 plus years out of it with solar panels installed. All right, so shifting gears here, and again, I know that was fairly dense, and we will have some time for questions after, because I did see there were a couple others in the chat. So community solar is the other major offering that we have currently at EnergySage, and it's essentially the option for people who are interested in being a little bit greener and sourcing their energy from a solar service, but are not currently at the point where they are able to or ready to go with rooftop solar. And we're going to jump into this one right now with a video, I think, kind of a quick breakdown of how community solar works.
What is community solar? Unfortunately, not everyone can install rooftop solar panels. Your property may not be suitable due to roof conditions or shading, or you might be a renter and not own the roof over your home. Luckily, even if you can't install solar panels where you live, you can still benefit from the power of the sun with community solar. How does community solar work? First, solar developers build large solar energy systems, known as solar farms. Then, people in the surrounding area join the community solar program to receive credits for a portion of the electricity that solar farm produces. This process is called virtual net metering, and it allows your utility account to receive credits for solar power that's produced elsewhere. So, how can you sign up? Ownership and subscription are the two main ways to sign up for community solar. In an ownership program, you purchase a set number of panels at the solar farm and then receive credit for all the electricity they generate. In a subscription program, you buy a portion of the electricity coming from the solar farm at a lower price than utility rates, but you do not actually own the panels themselves. You should expect to save 5 to 15% on electricity costs with your subscription. In addition to paying your community solar provider, you should still expect to pay a monthly electric bill because most programs will only cover a portion of your electricity usage. But you'll only pay for the electricity you need that your share of the solar farm does not cover. Community solar is quickly becoming popular across the country, but it's only currently available in select states. To see the most comprehensive list of what community solar programs are available in your area, check out the EnergySage Community Solar Marketplace. EnergySage, smarter energy decisions. What is community?
Matt, you're on mute.
Was muted there for a second. Yeah, so as the video broke down, community solar is essentially an alternate solar service, again, for people who are not currently able or ready to go with a rooftop option. And it's essentially a leasing or subscription option that allows you to buy energy or buy energy credits from one of those big local solar farms you probably see when you're driving down the highway with thousands of panels that are essentially connected directly to the grid. These farms will essentially generate all of this energy that they're directly exporting back to your utility network. And through a lot of federal subsidies and incentives, these farms are able to generate this energy at a rate less than what the utility currently charges their retail customers. And the benefit of this from a community solar perspective is that you're able to buy these net metering credits this farm has received at a guaranteed discount rate from what you're currently paying to your electric company. And then as it works through rooftop solar, when you generate these net metering credits, they're applied automatically to your bill to offset on a kilowatt hour to kilowatt hour basis. And with community solar, you essentially get though not necessarily as big a maximum savings over time as you might get through owning a rooftop system, a guaranteed rate at a much sort of lower overall initial investment to you. And very similar to our rooftop option, EnergySage specifically offers a marketplace for you in this way. So if you use our community solar marketplace, you just plug in your zip code and a general estimate of what your average utility costs are month to month. And we provide you with a list of vetted local solar farms to you, as well as a link to be able to go and register directly through their site. And through that platform, you can kind of see and vet specifically what their discount rate is, what programs they might have for low to moderate income customers, if that would apply to you, whether or not it's filling up quickly, so how much open subscription space they have, and really work from there to figure out what the best option is for you. So again, let's quickly talk about how virtual net metering works. Same as rooftop net metering, the solar farm is exporting all of this energy back to the grid and receiving these credits. So with community solar, you are not specifically buying the energy that's directly produced by the farm. They're not sending the energy from the farm directly to your home, but they are sending it back to the grid. And so by purchasing the net metering credits from the community solar farm, you are essentially buying the financial value that they're getting from the energy, and then essentially helping support or financially support renewable energy development in your area. Because if these farms are successful, more and more of them are able to pop up over time and sort of directly and slowly offset the amount of fossil fuels that are being burned by the utility region in the first place. Some people might get this confused with options you might have seen from your utility company to essentially pay them a little bit more to directly source your energy from a clean utility option. I know the Boston area specifically has a lot of these types of programs. And they're actually not mutually exclusive. So if your utility gives you an option to essentially raise your bill by maybe 5% to make sure that they are guaranteeing your energy is being sourced from a renewable source, you can actually then do that and then couple that with community solar to essentially kind of double up on your renewable coverage in the area, and then sort of essentially come pretty close to breaking out even on what your costs would have been otherwise. It does require that you sign up and sign a contract through your community solar farm. These contracts are fairly one-sided, meaning that it is giving you a guaranteed discount rate by a percentage basis compared to what you currently use, but it is cancelable at any time within a certain deadline from when you'd be looking to, let's say, move, for example. So with certain solar farms, you could cancel at any time. Some might give you like a 3-month buffer or a 6-month buffer, but essentially once you're canceled and you're separated from the community solar farm itself, you're able to maybe move to a new location and start again, or transfer your credits to a new location if you wanted to stick with one solar farm, but you're moving down the street. So there is a good amount of flexibility for you as a retail customer that you might not necessarily have with a rooftop option. But again, I would say if you do have a viable roof for it and you're planning on being in your home enough time to be able to offset the value of the system, rooftop is likely going to give you the better return on your investment over time versus community solar. Myself, I'm still a renter. I do still live in the Boston area, so I do community solar. It's a great option for people who, again, are not quite ready to be able to go the full rooftop option just yet. Here's a quick snapshot again of what this looks like through our site, for example. So if you're looking at a comparison of options here, we show you where the farm is located. We show you the estimated annual savings based on the percentage of your current bill. You can kind of read up on the developer, read some customer reviews from their experiences with them, shows you cancellation notice, the percentage of your bill credits that you're getting discounted, and you can choose to move forward from there. The registration process, again, it doesn't take too long. You're going to essentially allow the community solar access to your utility account information. Again, we thoroughly vet this beforehand, so you're not going in with a random company that you're handing off your utility credentials to. They are companies who partner with, let's say, Eversource or National Grid, for example, to have these existing relationships with to help fully manage your bill from a financial perspective. We do still have the energy advisor service as well for customers looking to go community solar. So during the walkthrough process, if you're registering on EnergySage and you're looking to kind of figure out how to take the next steps, we have several dedicated community solar advisors who talk to people every day on how to go through the registration. This map shows a quick snapshot of where community solar is eligible in the United States through either mandated funds in the general area, enabled incentive programs in the area that keep it running. It's not nationwide yet, as opposed to rooftop solar. There are some states that don't quite have programs that allow community solar to flourish. But if you live in one of these areas, again, I think a lot of people in this call are from Massachusetts, there are plenty of areas where it's sort of becoming progressively more prevalent over time. And as opposed to rooftop solar, which has obviously been around a while at this point, community solar is still relatively new, but has been growing at a fantastic rate, which is great to see. So how to get started, and Micah, you want to take it back over here for the final quick registration piece?
Yeah. So as I had mentioned, the best way to register your property is to go to energysage.com/p/BBR. That will get you registered for your property. And then we also, if there are friends, family, neighbors, work colleagues that are interested in going solar too, and after you've gone solar with EnergySage, whether it's through rooftop solar or whether it's through community solar, we do offer a referral-based program as well, as you can see here, that you can refer friends, family, whoever it may be interested in going solar. And we'll open it up for a Q&A. At the bottom down here, you can see this is the link again that you could go to register your property. But we do have some questions. Matt, I don't know if you were able to see some of those. First one up from John, and I think you had touched on this on one of the earlier slides, but what is the monetary value of each kilowatt hour credit when excess electricity is sold back to the utility? Is the full residential rate, supply and delivery, of about 27 cents a kilowatt hour, or is it less? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, great question. So this inherently will depend on your utility region, and in some cases down to the actual time of day when you're consuming energy. Now, again, I'll focus this specifically on Massachusetts. A lot of the major utility regions in Mass will credit you at a 1-to-1 rate. So essentially, if you were to take a look at your bill and look at every individual charge that scales based on your kilowatt hour consumption, it would cover every scalable part of that bill. Now, for some people who might live in potentially one of the municipal utility zones, I know there are a handful of towns and cities across Mass that have their own municipal utility. Those are less consistent, but like Eversource and National Grid, for example, most territories like that are going to give you a full 1-to-1 coverage up to the coverage of your bill. So there are areas where you'll get a cash payment at the end of each calendar year where they cycle through your credits, and if you have an excess, they might pay you out. Most areas that are going to do that, though, are not going to pay you at retail rate. They might give you wholesale rate for electricity if they do export your payments back as a cash payment at the end of the year. But at wholesale rate for electricity is generally closer to like 3 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour, which is why you generally only want to size for the amount of energy you're going to be using in a given year, rather than going for like 150% of your yearly utility consumption.
Awesome.
And moving right along here, Jennifer Jones had a couple questions. I own a condo and a triple decker with a rubber roof. How do the solar racks attach? Would they make a lot of holes in the rubber? So I would assume with the triple decker, you're looking at a flat roof. And in that case, most flat roof racking systems, especially with rubber roofs, you might see what we often see, at least, and there are a couple different racking systems installers will use, is actually more of a weight and ballast system. So very few, if any, actual penetrations on the roof, but more of a system that's built and spread out over the top. And so if for an installer who does it, they are typically very low impact on the roof itself for a lot of those types of roofs, as opposed to like a more traditional asphalt shingle setup. With 3 owners in our building, each with their own meter, how is the solar connected in this case? This is a great question, obviously very common and prevalent for Boston. So systems typically will need to be tied to one specific meter, meaning that you're either directly covering energy that's drawn through that meter for that specific unit, and then everything in excess is going to be exported. So you'd have a couple options there. You could essentially install independent systems for each of the independent meter, as well as the common meter. Or you could do what we call a Schedule Z, where you can essentially share credits through each individual meter on the property. This is similar to community solar with what we call virtual net metering, where you might export, let's say you have 3 units in a home and you're producing triple the amount of energy one unit would use, you're going to be exporting a lot of power back to the grid. And if your grid allows it, you can essentially share those credits through each individual meter. So it's a little more complicated than it might be going through one individual home. Typically, the permitting process is a bit trickier for that because they have to approve for a full 3-unit or 3-meter property. But it is possible to do, and Massachusetts is one of the friendlier states for allowing sharing of credits at the residential level.
And Matt, a good fallback option on that too, because obviously not every owner may want to go solar or have rooftop panels on their roof. Another option for that is community solar.
Exactly.
That Jennifer would be able to subscribe to on her own with her own meter, and it doesn't matter what the other 2 owners want to do. So there is still a couple of different options that are available.
Yep, exactly. We touched on the new roof question here. I may be moving within as few as 5 years. Is there a recommended minimum number of years of occupancy after installing a solar system to make a reasonable return on investment? This will vary depending on your home, your current cost of electricity, the amount of production you're getting for your roof structure. If you have not registered yet, we actually give you the payback period or the estimated payback period on the quotes you'll get through EnergySage. So if you get a number of quotes based on what you pay versus what you'll be offsetting, we might show you a system that'll pay itself back in 6 years or 7 years. For Massachusetts, the sweet spot there is typically going to be about 7 years, 7 to 8, based on current utility rates versus the cost of solar. Again, it is an investment in the home's resale value. So if you had like a 6-year payback period, but you moved in 5, I'd say it's very possible you could make up the remaining year of that in home resale for the added value of solar to the home. But I'd say you do typically, if you're looking to have the system fully pay for itself when you move, you're probably going to want to offset a pretty large chunk of the system's ROI before you actually end up moving itself. Or again, consider community solar if you're going to be moving before the system will pay itself off. Linda here is asking about the timing of installation. When is best? Will companies install in the fall and spring? And new panels being invented, if the price tag is acceptable, should I go with the panels with battery storage? Two great questions. So timing of install, installers will install year round. Obviously, weather permitting, if it's a snowstorm, if the roof has a considerable amount of snow coverage on it, installers won't have great access to the roof. But the benefit of going solar in like the late fall and winter time, as long as weather is permitting, is that there's typically lower volume of customers looking to do it. So you might be able to get installed quicker, get online quicker. If you go in the spring, you're able to get the system installed right when the long months of the summer hit, so you can start generating a lot of value. And then us specifically, we're actually really right in the time of year when we typically see the most registrations on our site, which is people looking to get registered and get installed before year's end. So really, there's no one correct answer to that. I'd say, again, if you have availability, if this is something you want to do, the earlier you get installed, the more you're going to end up saving over time. New panels being invented, if the price tag is acceptable, should you go with battery storage? Entirely up to you. I typically recommend people look at the battery as a completely separate addition to the system. You know, the panels are something that will pay themselves off over time. The battery is not something that you'll typically want to do from a financial return perspective. It's not something that'll typically pay for itself, or at least not in a short period of time. It doesn't last quite as long as the rest of the system. Batteries are warranted for about 10 years. But the value of the battery is that it's giving you this element of home resiliency and backup protection that the panels are not going to give you on their own. So if you lose power consistently, if you really want to be as grid independent as possible, the battery is a great option for that. If you're not quite sure that's for you just yet, then you can have your solar installer put in a system that is battery ready, so that if you change your mind in a couple of years, if battery prices come down, then you could retrofit a battery onto your existing system when you change your mind. So I would say it's a minority of solar customers at this point who work through us who get battery storage, but there are a number of people who get it. I want to say it's something around 17 to 20% currently. And Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I think it's right at 17% of EnergySage consumers utilize a battery too.
Great. Yeah. So what does the ownership model look like for community solar? This is, again, kind of the less prevalent version. I would say it's more common for people to do the subscription option. The ownership option is essentially you buying a certain number of panels as your share of the farm. You know, as if you were getting those panels installed on your roof, but you're just owning a subsection of the farm from the community solar system itself. You're not buying the credits, you're generating the credits directly, just not directly on your home. Whereas the residential setup or with the subscription setup, you're not buying the panels, you're not leasing the panels, you are just buying the credits generated by the energy exported from that farm. As far as whether you can visit it, you will be told exactly which farm you'd be subscribing to. So if you were working through Arcadia, for example, they will tell you which farm and which municipality you're subscribing as part of. As far as whether you can actually just go up and go straight over to the farm and start walking through the panels, typically I would say no, it is private property. So I would hesitate people from going and trespassing through the farm itself. But if you're able to get in touch with the developer who owns the farm, I'd say I do know there are farms that have done some smaller tours like that in the past. There's not a ton to see other than being able to get up close and personal with the panels themselves, but certainly something you could potentially look into, or just drive past if you want to go take a look at it from a distance and check out what it looks like. They are pretty cool to see up close. Ian Woodward asked, if my house currently has 100 amp service, would I need to upgrade to 200 amp service in order to install solar panels? Very probably. So you need a high enough capacity panel so that your grid connection plus your solar generation is not going to exceed a certain percentage of your panel's total capacity, which is typically around 125%. I would say the rule of thumb is typically 200. So if your home is not currently 200 amps, unless you're looking at a very small home overall with a very small solar install, 200 amp service is probably going to be necessary. It's something that almost every installer should be well equipped to be able to take care of as part of the project. It is going to be a bit of an additional cost added onto the total system price, but again, by nature of being a requirement for solar, it is something you can bundle with the tax credit. Great question. And one more from John here. What is the average payback period for a solar project on a single family home in the Boston area? Yep, we talked about that a little bit. I would say expect it to be probably in the 6 to 8 year range. But again, if you register on EnergySage, you'll be able to see that directly. So if you haven't yet, again, I would recommend everyone here who's interested, go on over to the site. It takes you 10 or 15 minutes to register, pass on your bill or at least an estimate of your usage, and we will get you some live quotes to be able to start comparing.
Matt, can you speak to that a little bit too? Incentive, you covered this a little bit with the federal tax credit being 30%, but what does it mean for local incentives as well? Can you speak to, is there still a state level income tax credit? Is there the SMART program, and kind of just high level on what that all encompasses?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Massachusetts does have a $1,000 state tax credit that is available to anyone in the state. So to couple with the 30% federal credit you're getting, you do get a $1,000 state credit as well. And finally, for eligible service territories, which is largely going to be Eversource and National Grid, there is the SMART program, which is essentially an additional solar incentive through the state of Massachusetts that pays you out a certain value per kilowatt hour of energy you're generating to couple with your net metering benefits. It's a block-based incentive, meaning that the value goes down over time as more people get installed, and we are in a later block, so it's not quite as profitable as it used to be, but there is still room for people going solar to get maybe an additional $1,000 to $2,000 over 10 years to offset the system price. And again, that's a case where that program itself has been going away over time. So if this is something you're interested in, the earlier you go, likely the better block rate you'll get for the SMART program specifically.
Awesome. All good questions. Really appreciate everybody asking these questions. I think they're somewhat unique circumstances, but I think it always helps out a few other folks that are interested in going solar as well. So great questions all around. And with that being said, I think we're coming up to the top of the hour. So fit it all within an hour. It's a lot of information. I definitely would suggest reaching out to either myself or Matt. I will try and pull that slide up again.
And I think we'll be including our contact info as part of the follow-up, right? So again, yeah. We talk to people who are looking to go solar every day. If you would find it useful once you've registered with us, I would recommend making your account first. But once you've registered with us, you'll have calendar info for an energy advisor such as myself, and we are always happy to jump on for a quick 15 or 30-minute chat with people about their options and what to expect.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, thank you again to everybody that participated in tonight's webinar session. Like we've mentioned numerous times, this is recorded and we will be sending it out. Thank you to Boston Building Resources. Thank you to Monique for allowing us to be part of this fall workshop series, and looking forward to working with you all in the future and hopefully help you go solar.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Great questions.